Newsela is a website that provides a huge library of readings at different Lexile levels to help teachers differentiate reading assignments for their students. During the COVID-19 crisis, Newcastle County Votech has free premium access to their entire library of readings. This library is especially powerful for our science, social studies, and ELA teachers. Let's learn how to use it. To get started, go to newsela.com and hit Join Now in the upper right. On the next screen, select I'm an Educator, and then indicate that yes, you are a faculty member. Select your role as a teacher, and hit Next. Next, sign up with Google and use your school-provided Google email address. Select that you agree to allow Google to access these things, and then indicate whether or not you already have a Newsela account. From here, you'll be prompted to select your school. All 4 schools in our district should be listed, and hit Confirm School. And then you'll be asked some questions about the content that you want to see in Newsela. Newsela will tell you that there is 5 reading levels for each article. Stephanie's simply hitting the skip section over on the left. Then it'll tell you that it syncs with your Google Classroom account. We do not use Google Classroom, so she hits skip again. Then you have the options of selecting which subjects you teach and what kind of content that you want to see within Newsela. You can also indicate what grade levels you teach. Then she'll hit Save. You have successfully created a premium account if you see this menu of options with distance learning, election 2020, news, library, etc. up at the top. If you are like me and you signed up for Newsela before we had premium access, you will likely not see all of these options. Here is what I see when I log into Newsela with my school Google. And no matter how I tried, I could not seem to gain access to the premium content. If the same happens to you, no worries. I found that by signing up with a personal email address and selecting a school in our district, I was still able to gain access to the premium content. Not ideal, but it gets the job done. So let's explore our options. I'm going to move from right to left. In the upper right, I have my binder, and this is a feature that I'm not really going to use. This feature applies to teachers who use Newsela to assign work to students. Newsela does not play well with Schoology or with eSchool, so it would be yet another place that teachers would have to check for student work. So my advice is going to be to push out all materials that we find in Newsela via Schoology. More on that in a bit. So we're going to ignore this binder option. Under your content, you have the ability to build text sets. So let's say you're a 9th grade ELA teacher teaching Romeo and Juliet, and you want to pull together some articles on Shakespeare, on theater, on Elizabethan England. You could collect all of these articles into a text set, and then other members of your PLC would be able to access that text set by clicking Text Sets at your school. From here, we have subject-specific searches, where we can access some great content related to social studies, science, ELA, and then the library, which contains articles generally in the liberal arts. There are also some great current events available under the News tab and the Election 2020 tab. There's a Distance Learning tab here that looks really appealing, but in it are scripted lessons that don't really apply to our district curriculum, so I don't see much value in this function for NCCVT. And then we have an overall search feature where you can search the entire website for content related to a particular topic. Each subject that I click on will bring up a menu of options on the left to help me narrow down my search a bit. So let's say I'm a social studies teacher teaching U.S. history. When I click on social studies, I have this long list of options to help me narrow my search. And I was very excited to see that primary sources is an option because my students always struggle with the difficult and antiquated language in primary sources. Within this primary sources tab, I was able to find George Washington's farewell address. Now, when I first click on this article, the article is going to pop up in its original language, and it will indicate that the Lexile level is at its max. If I want to learn more about what max means, I can scroll to the beginning of the reading to see the word count, the recommended audience, and the text level. So let's take a look at the beginning of the speech, which I have highlighted in yellow. Friends and citizens, the period for a new election of a citizen to administer the executive government of the United States being not far distant, and the time actually arrived when your thoughts must be employed in designating the person who is to be clothed with that important trust, it appears to me proper, especially as it may conduce to a more distinct expression of the public voice, that I should now apprise you of the resolution I have formed to decline being considered among the number of those out of whom a choice is to be made. Whew! Now, if I lower the Lexile to 1150, I can see that my word count has dropped from 2,453 words to 1,238. And what was once a 12th grade reading level is now a 9th grade reading level. And if I look at that same paragraph, I now have, friends and citizens, the period for a new election of the President of the United States is not far distant. The time has arrived when your thoughts must be employed in designating the person who is to be given this important trust. It appears to me proper that I should now inform you of my decision to decline being considered among the number of those who wish to be president. Already easier. Now let's see what happens when we lower the Lexile all the way down to 590. Now I have a word count of just 625, and I'm now at a 3rd grade reading level. What was once my lofty paragraph has now become, friends and citizens, a new election of the President of the United States is near. I want you to know I will not run again. Very simple, very straight to the point. It is also worth noting that some articles, though certainly not all of the articles, also have the option of being translated into Spanish, and what's more, different Lexile levels of Spanish. So here, I have this article on how video games can help with your physical fitness. I have not yet read this article, but I'm a bit skeptical. And on top of having the normal option of adjusting the English Lexile, I also have the option of translating the article into Spanish and then adjusting the Spanish Lexile level. Now let's talk about how to get these articles into the hands of our students. Before we talk about how to get the articles off of Newsela, let's talk about grading groups and individually assigning work in Schoology. These two features in Schoology will allow you to discreetly assign different work to different students so that students are not aware that their peers are working on different work than they are. To set up grading groups, click into one of your courses, and then click on Members over on the left-hand side. You can see that I already have some Hogwarts-inspired grading groups created for this course. To create a new grading group, I will click on this Organize Members into Grading Groups button, type in the name of my new grading group, and then select the students that I want to join that grading group. Okay, now that I have my 4 people that I want in that grading group created, I'm going to go ahead and hit Create Grading Group. And I can edit these grading groups at any point in time by going over to the gear and hitting Edit to add or remove students from grading groups. It is important to note that students will be able to see the name of their grading group. So we want to avoid using names like low, middle, and high, and instead stick to something more innocuous like Hogwarts houses, sports teams, colors, etc. Once I have my grading groups set up, I'm ready to go back to Newsela. Up at the top of each article, you'll see a big button telling you to create an assignment. Again, because we have Schoology, which is way more robust than Google Classroom and other learning management systems, we do not need to use this assignment feature, and we should ignore this big banner. Instead, once you have found an article that you want to assign to students, and you have selected the Lexile levels that you think would be appropriate, you will download each version of the article by clicking on the print button below the article's title. When you hit print, you'll get an option to print out the article in the quiz, or the article quiz and the quiz answers. For my students, I'm going to select to just print out the article. But for me as the teacher, I might select to print out the article with the quiz and answers, and then I might decide to create a test quiz in Schoology as a way of verifying that students read and as practice with the styles of questions that students would see on district assessments or on the SAT. For now, I'm just going to select to print the article. So I'm going to go back to my max level, print the article only. Now I want to point out that the highlight I made on the article does not appear when I go to print out the article. So don't waste your time with a bunch of highlighting or annotating. Once I'm here, I'll save the article by going to my download button, selecting the open the file, and going to save it. So I'll save this article with the article name, and then after the article name, I'm going to label the article with the first letter of the grading group associated with that article, and that's going to help me stay organized. So I'm going to label this max level article with an H for Hufflepuff, since they are my high flyers. Now I'm going to repeat this process for my middle readers. I'm going to select the Lexile that I've deemed appropriate for them. I'll go to print, article only, and I'm going to save this article with the article name, followed by a G for Gryffindor, because they are my middle of the road readers. And lastly, I'm going to select my low Lexile level, print, article only, download it, this article I'm going to label with an R for Ravenclaw, as they are my struggling readers. Okay, now that I have my article saved, I'm going to hop back over to my Schoology tab, and I'm going to go into the folder where I want this work to live. So I'll go into my 4th marking period folder, my April subfolder, my folder for Wednesday, April 15th. I'm going to post a Google Doc with instructions up at the top of my folder, which tells my students to read the article and then respond to the discussion board and respond to at least one peer. I'm going to change my share features on this document so that anyone with the link can view, just to make it easier for my students. That way they don't have to sign in just to read some simple instructions. I will copy that link, go into my folder, add materials, add file link, today's directions. Okay, now below my directions for the day, I'm going to add in my articles. So I'll go to add materials, add file or link, add file, attach files, and I'm going to select my high level Lexile. I'm going to select open, and because I labeled this with an H, it's perfectly clear to me that this is intended for my Hufflepuffs. I'll go to this triangle of dots, which is my individually assigned icon, and in the assign to box, I'll type in Hufflepuff, and now Hufflepuffs will only see this article. Notice too that I can type in individual students' names as well, but for these purposes, I'm just going to stick to my grading groups. I'll hit add. So I'm going to go through that same process for my other two articles, add file or link, Add File, Attach File, select my Gryffindors, labeled with the G. I'll go to my individually assigned triangle, assign to Gryffindor, add file or link, add file, attach file, select my Ravenclaws, individually assign to Ravenclaw, add. Okay. And once I've added all of my materials, I'll create my discussion board that I mentioned in my directions. Alright, so my folder for Wednesday, April 15th is good to go. Now, under my profile picture, there is a course options drop-down where I have the option to view course as. And this is a great way for me to check my work. So let me view this course as someone in my Hufflepuff grading group. I'm going to select someone that I know is in my Hufflepuff grading group. Now if I go into my 4th marking period folder, Wednesday, April 15th, she only sees the Hufflepuff article. She does not see the other two. To her knowledge, there is only one article. Okay, and that is the beauty of grading groups and individually assigning work, and that is the beauty of Newsela creating differentiated readings for us. So this is how you can use Newsela to assign differentiated readings to your students. Please reach out to your instructional technology coach if you have any questions.